Welcome to a highly informal yet highly informational video with Jonathan C.R. Davies, creator of the Unity Bubble and the Unity Bubble program. I hope you find this as interesting and, in fact, fascinating as I have. Thanks for watching. I think this is probably a valid question for most people who are contemplating the bubble, or who are interested in it, or who are in fact in this human experience and would like to find some meaning in it. And a large aspect of the human experience is pain. And why do we choose to suffer pain? And what is it about the bubble in our path within it that will bring us through that? And what will we experience on the other side?
Well, we've all grown up knowing pain. It's one of our first experiences when we come down the birth canal. That's where it starts. Tightly compressed and programmed like a hard drive when we come in to accept all aspects of the human family that we've been born into. And that human family is engaged in a culture and a society, and that's what you come into. You're born into that resonance. So you know suffering from the very beginning. You come in born to a mother who is suffering as she brings you into the world. That's also programmed. So you're programmed that this is what you get, and possibly there isn't anything better. And the strange thing about humankind, all of us, is we like what we know, which is the craziest thing. And offered a better alternative, we go back to what we know, which is suffering. So a person's determination of self-value is all around that. It's not good to outlive, or not to outlive, but to outdo your parents is an automatic patricide-matricide situation. So we're programmed, and in the DNA, we're programmed to accept what we know. And as people would say, better the devil you do know than the one you don't, because we're also expecting that even if it's better, it may not be the better that we hope for. And in the experiences and the experiments in life, we often find that no, it's not better, it's more of the same. So why do you go where you're just going to get more of the same? It doesn't make sense. So we go back to what we know. That's where we're comfortable. In abuse, in situations of abuse and where people are abused or do abuse, that's a cycle, that's a pattern, that's what we get used to. So boys and girls who are trained in one way are trained very well. And they're trained to maintain a position. And we're trained to maintain that suffering is a part of life. In fact, all of the idioms of life all point back to suffering. You only learn by suffering. Well, if that's what you believe, and your belief system is your operating system, then you get more of the same. It's that simple. And
we have an innate fear of letting go of that pain and suffering.
Well, because we associate ourselves as pain and suffering, that our life is full of pain and suffering. And so why should we expect anything different? This is what we've always known here in the human experience. Indeed, all of the great literature is about suffering. All of country and Western music is about suffering. Occasionally, there'll be a composer who brings brightness to things. But, oh, that's just something else. It's nice for them, but not for me. Great for everyone else, but oh, not for me. You see, so we're self-regulating. We learn very well, and then we control ourselves, and we tend to stay with what we know.
So what is the truth about suffering?
Suffering it's had its time, it's had its purpose, but it's time for it to be over. But that's an individual choice, because the nature of the universe is primally the ability to choose for oneself. But we're trained out of choosing. In fact, most of us have even lost the ability to choose. And we're going to choose through a narrower spectrum of experience. And if that seems to be suffering for us, which for the great proportion of humankind it is still, then, well, what's the matter? Everybody else does it. And if I don't, well, then I'm going to be an outsider. I might actually enjoy myself. Oh, God forbid I should enjoy myself. Well, I might actually become myself. oh my God, what would that be like? So there's fear, there's programming, there's the educational system, there are the taboos of the society you live in, which are different everywhere, incidentally. And so you choose what you know. And you've learned to live with this. And you've been trained, and you're now self-training. And you believe you shouldn't have better.
So what would be the precursor to choosing to end suffering? How would that occur in a human being?
Well, I like to say that that people come to the point of making different choices when they find themselves sitting in the bottom of a ditch with 3 inches of water in it, face down, on a dark and stormy night. And they say, oh, there must be something better than this. And then they come from that point. They come from the wall. They come from the bottom of the ditch, where death appears imminent. Worse, annihilation appears to be the possibility, because as we face death, we think that we may not exist afterwards. It's not programmed into us to believe that we live forever. This is not something that's taught generally. And even if it is taught, it's taught amongst a select few. So it's not general to the human condition that there is actually life after death, and that there was life before death, and that life itself is a continuum, and we just haven't hooked into it yet. So that's an aspect of it.
And it's also conceivable that it's not just necessarily through the suffering and through sitting in that dark ditch. It could be even in the lapse of luxury and in the absence of anything else to gain.
Well, let me tell you, I've been in all places. I've been with $5 in my pocket, and I've been in the other side of the room. However a person is possible to live, I've had the entire experience, and the experience is the same. As I think Pearl Bailey, and it's been ascribed to many people, I've been rich, and I've been poor, and rich is better. You know, that aspect is there. But in fact, who is in both experiences? You're eating a 5-star dinner on a luxury liner, or in first class in an aircraft, a 5-star hotel, or you're eating a po' boy in the heart of drowned Louisiana. Who's there? You are there in both places. And that never changes. Well, would you prefer to start associating with that one? Or would you like to get out of the experience of suffering? And because of the nature of the universe, and it's primally and fundamentally, and the first decision of this universe was that all sentient creatures, all beings who could think for themselves, recognized that I am, that I exist, that I live, in this moment, at least. It allows for the wideness of expression, and that's primal, so we can't change. That's the responsibility of every thinking individual, is to make their own decisions. And unfortunately, the system has probed us, taught us, educated us, sparked us with cattle prods, to accept that somebody knows better than I do for me. So you give up all, it all goes into a mist. And you've got what you've got, and you externalize the world and say that everybody's doing it to me. This is fundamental. Everybody says, well, yeah, but they want this, or they want this, or oh, if I do this, what will my mother think? Well, your mother probably, bless her heart, has done her best, but she's probably not thinking, for one. Mm-hmm. And she may find herself in the same place, but she also wants to do it. So when people get to the fundamental, the deepest places, the questions always remain the same. Who am I? Where did I come from? What am I doing here? And where am I going? But that's put to somebody else as a responsibility of somebody else to provide all of the answers. And in this Western world, it's very much a patriarchal society where the government takes care of us. Oh, we get so upset if the government doesn't take care of us, that the justice system doesn't render justice. So we abrogate our own sense of personal responsibility.
And beyond that, isn't there an element of genetics?
There is an element of genetics, but that would be a whole other conversation of going into how did we get here in human form. If we assume that we lived before, and we also surmise that because we lived before, it's possible that we might live afterwards, then we would have to say that this is a stage, and we didn't build this body. So where did that come from? That's a whole other level of exploration, which I can get into with people, but that takes us on a whole other journey somewhere else. It's relevant, but I don't think it's relevant to this particular time and place.
The fundamental feeling tone that drives us at the end of the day to make that decision. And with me personally, it was my entire being. I had been searching for this for so long. And once I came into the field of that possibility, it was just this yes from the deepest aspects of my being. And it was probably a response to the fact that I was tired of the suffering. Mm-hmm. I was tired of the searching for the truth. And I recognized that there was a path that you were offering to alleviate that suffering. So once again, I think this whole conversation, obviously it's evolved from the idea of suffering. So it is possible to make a choice. Would you call it a choice? Would you call it a leap of faith? In your experience working with people, what would you call that shift of consciousness?
Well, I think the shift of consciousness is, as I've said before, you reach the end of the wall and you find yourself trapped in a corner, and it's like, is that all there is? And at the center, there's always a yearning for something more. There has to be more. And it's determining that you're going to take that first footstep towards the more. But it also deals with looking at all the things that stop you from moving forward and have always stopped you moving forward, and if you don't make a choice, will continue to stop you from moving forward in the future.
And that's what you call doing the work.
I call that doing the work. And fundamentally, as you've been talking about here, we've been going into, the primary aspect is resistance. It's resistance to being in the flow. It's resistance to being connected to life. It's resistance to saying, I could have more, which is a soul desire to have more. That's a continual soul desire, because all of the people on earth, for the most part, with certain exceptions, are soul beings. And the nature of the soul is to desire more experience, more exploration, continuous, to seal this into the future, so that that's the nature of the soul, to explore and to experience. We can go into all kinds of other things, but it really doesn't translate. That's fundamental to our nature. And all soul beings would find that when they suffer, they feel stuck. And stuck means there's no more. And that means I'm stuck, I don't have a choice. So again, we go back to fundamentals. What's the universe about? Making a choice. If you find yourself in a universe where the whole exploration is about choice, and you find yourself unable to make a choice, you are going to suffer. That's the nature of it. So a soul is always looking to experience more and to explore forever. We don't think we're going to die. We think we're going to go on forever. When you get to my age, you've seen your mortality a few times. And we joke about teenagers who don't know their mortality, and they get to about 27, and then they realize, well, I've had some experience, I've made some mistakes, maybe I could open to learning a thing or two. And so we have this progressive journey. And we're given 70, 75 years to work it out. And for most, it's not the first time.
Can we talk a little bit about the actual process of the soul? You touched on that. And I found that in my particular journey to be of complete fascination to me, because we are not taught to understand, or we are led to believe that our soul fully inhabits our body. And that, as I found out through my protocols with the bubble process, is not the case. And the transformation, for the feeling tone is quite incredible. So maybe you could talk about that process a little.
Well, the soul, I mean, without getting into a whole determination about how life streams work, how there are separations in the fields of life and the streams of life out from source, it's highly organized. It's more intelligent than you can even imagine the word intelligence would allude to. There is no word that's accurate. There are 1,000 names for God. If we look at one aspect of creation, I don't believe that God is the only aspect of creation. But one name of God is, if you think you can understand this, you are a complete fool. So we're already in the correct place. Now when we go into the soul stream, human beings are soul stream beings. They are at the end of the soul stream expression. Souls are expressed by an aspect of creation to live a completely independent existence inside this universe. And they live in a particular dimension, which we will say is a form and a space and a vibrational range of conscious expression. It may mean nothing to us here. In fact, many people are from areas of soul where there is nothing that translates. And when we talk about soul, we say they explore and they experience. We can talk about qualities of the soul and how a soul lives, and that's in resonance. Resonance is a big word. We understand it more these days. Think of Aretha Franklin breaking a wine glass with her voice. That's called resonance. So she is in total connection with that wine glass, and it responds to her. Well, on a soul level, there are certain qualities. And the qualities are A, awareness, and B, intention, and 3, focus. And there are aspects of the soul, so let's suggest that you and I are experiencing ourselves as a soul being. There's no language. There's no need for language. It's simply all understanding is in the vibration, the frequency, and the space in which it resides. So you have those 3 aspects. It progresses through time in some cases. In some cases it's beyond time and space. But the qualities of the soul are essentially the same. So we have this resonance aspect. And when a soul wishes to express itself in another dimension, it has intention, it has awareness, it has interest, and it comes into resonance with the field or the experience it would like to experience, it would like to inhabit, it would like to live in and experience more fully. And so let's say it looks at a human being. It says, I'm out here, those humans are kind of interesting. They're having an interesting experience. They're going through a great transition. They're moving from suffering into another reality. I'd like to be engaged in that. So it looks around like we might look at stars in the heavens, and it sees all these lights, and all of them are light, and it's saying, I wonder which one would be appropriate for me. And this is unspoken, non-verbal, fully engaged, looking out into the universe of people. Each one of them is a little bright ball. And then one of them goes, looking like the Star of David. We don't want to go there in particular. But it sees that, it focuses on it, it intends, and whoosh, it's there. So it becomes the enlivening aspect of the human body that's been created by another aspect, another stream of consciousness, on another exploration of a different kind. The nature is different. So we have a human who's connected to both the creational stream and the experiencing stream. The creational stream is a body that lasts for 75 years, average, maybe longer. Some people might live to 130. In previous times, people lived to 1,000. Possibly in the next 50 years, we'll learn to live to 1,000 and enjoy it. And so, the soul engages and puts a piece of itself down there. It's not all of it. It puts a piece of itself in there, and it sees how it works and sees how it plays out. And it's looking for interaction, just like a mother would have a daughter or a son who's looking for the interaction. You can't force the son or daughter to love you. What use would that be? Do you want someone to be forced to love you? It's contrary to the nature of life and how it expresses. So then it looks for an answer. It looks for the answer coming back. And the answer is there more to me than this? Is this all I am? Is this all there is? Is that all there is? And So the soul becomes far more interested in that particular individual expression of itself. And then there becomes a play back and forth. Wherever there's a question, there's always an answer. And as the individual human grows in awareness and sensitivity to the subtleties of energetics, of magnetics, of the life stream, of the gestalt in which it lives, and it starts to impart, as we talked about, meaning to this, then it develops a meaningful relationship. Who with? With the soul who projected it. So there's this back and forth play. And at some point, that being, of itself, of its own experience, bathed in sorrow, drenched in suffering, and hung to dry out, finally says, I think I'm ready. At which point the soul lights up. It's like the lights on the cameras come up, and the person finds themselves what? Eventually illuminated. There is a large part of the soul, and a large part of the interest of the soul is directly focused on the one that it created. And so there's a return home. There's not only a return home, it's a trip for both. Because the soul can't come to a human body or to the world of humanity and be engaging and influencing and having the experience unless it's born here. So generally they're born. They're born, and the time now is cosmologically that we're entering the time of the elimination of suffering. But that has to be a conscious choice. And all aspects of the life stream must be allowed to make conscious and individual choices for themselves. Only when the person or the individual or the being has lost the ability to choose will it be assisted. But consciousness, as I'm fond of saying, it always stacks the deck in its own favor. We're part of consciousness, but we've forgotten that. So as we become interested, we start to focus our attention back towards the source. And there are many determinations as to who that is, what that is. There are many world religions which all point the way. But when you really become interested in truth, you start to move away from religions because it's very prescribed. And most people will find that inside a religion or a school of training, there will be a prescribed level of education. For instance, you're in grade 1, you're going to experience the prescribed level of instruction for grade 1. You're not doing grade 2. If you start to ask grade 2 questions, come on, Jimmy, back here, focus on what we're focusing on. So this is a gradual determination of the final end aspect, which is the human. To start turning the focus back to source, back to what is my source, and then engage in that entire journey.
So how much truth would you give to the expression, when the student is ready, the master appears?
That's connected to universal truth. There is no way that you can sell truth. Truth cannot be stuffed down your throat. It will never be accepted, even under the gentlest of circumstances, until the recipient is ready. You can't force a baby to toilet train before the baby's ready to. And so there's the play back and forth. How much is my child? You might consider the soul looking at us as its child, its direct lineage. How much is this one ready for? Of course, it understands like the ultimate parent would understand, and it cares as the ultimate parent cares. So it's all this play out in this universe experience, the play out of free will. And free will allows for, you can choose suffering, or you can choose something much better. But if all you've ever been experienced or shown is suffering, you're going to lack, you're going to experience betrayal, you're going to experience abandonment, and you're going to experience a lack of trust, which is permeated like yeast through a loaf of bread. It's just there. And it's not to be questioned because you don't even know to begin to question it. So these are some of the aspects that one deals with. And if you want to move past them, you have to look at all of these aspects and say, well, why is that? Why do I have this reaction every time someone raises their hand? I have a freaked reaction. Well, why does that happen? When's the last time it happened? When was the time before? Who was the first one that caused you to feel that way? Were you badly beaten as a child, as so many of us are? So in life, we're going to be abused in one of 5 ways. We're going to be abused spiritually, told we're not who we think we are, or perceive or feel that we are. We're going to be abused violently physically. We're going to be abused emotionally, intellectually, and I forget what the other one is.
Maybe sexually.
Sexually, yeah, of course, because so many are. So that's what we know. And we tend to go back to what it is we know, because it's comfortable.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the expression and words and the language and the energy behind it, because it's curious as you speak. I sense through my own journey that the suffering got to be so profound and so unbearable that it was beyond words at a certain point. And once I made the choice and the opportunity arose in my life to make that choice, having come through to the polar opposite side, to the fullness of self, once again, there are no words.
No. Well,
and we find it difficult. And I believe there are others who have done this program and who find it very difficult to express what it is they're experiencing. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because you've had so many years of seeing this transformation in people. I'm just one of the many.
Well, primarily I saw it first in myself. I engaged in it myself many, many years ago. I realized, well, I'm living a good life. I mean, I'm doing my best, and I'm surrounded by what the world would term righteous people. I don't care what background you come from, or what teaching, or who your master is, or if you have a master. Just life itself will teach you that there are certain aspects where you just, and I forget what I was about to say. So we'll go back to that. Ask me the question again. It does happen.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if it was really a question.
Oh, yes. So we get, no, sorry, carry on.
Okay, I'm just trying to talk. I took the sort of the picture of the suffering being unbearable, where you can't, it's so unbearable that you can't express it. And once you go through the process and go to the other side, the experiences become more and more subtle, and again they become beyond words, which is why so many people who have gone through the bubble program, including myself, find it very difficult to express the profundity and the new way of being and seeing, because it is beyond words. So it's from one state of beyond words in the negative aspect through to another state which is again beyond words. So I'm curious, because you've seen many people go through this process, I'm curious as to how you would describe this, and what would be the reason for, or what's the fundamental underlying principle of that phenomenon?
Well, I think early in our explorations of consciousness, and I have to say that I wasn't particularly interested in exploring consciousness itself, but I became interested in it through a period of time. I was more interested in, how can we change this? How can we reduce this? How can we, you might say, fix it, because I'm a guy, right? So fix it. How can we re-alter this? How can we tune the dial to, say, come in Tokyo? We're actually looking for the real thing. And early on in that exploration, it was explained to us that presence, for instance, my connection is, I've always felt a presence. I've never known what that presence was, but there was always a time when I could say, what does God think of me? Or what does the bigger, how am I in relationship to this? And I would always have a sense of feeling, and I would say it was the presence. It's just presence, and it's a simple word, and it entails so much, and we can get into pointers as to what that might be. But they said, well, these are the higher beings that we were in conjunction with. And you can leave this in or take it out or do whatever you like. And we had an early conversation about this, and it was really about presence. And with people early on in the late 19th, early 20th century, we're talking about, and I think it was Jung who said, truly, transformation only happens when there's a spiritual experience. And we don't really understand the word spirit. It, again, is beyond definition. So the idea was that if you experience the presence, you can transform. But just living your life, if you do it without presence, then there's no reason to transform, and there's no way to transform. The transformation is possible. So any real change in life, people have a moment of connection. They might experience it or express it in a number of ways. It depends on the language, it depends on where the person is in their experience. But they will talk about this presence. And what is that presence? And they said, we were told that, the challenge is that people do not experience the presence very often. And if you look around the institutions of the world, whether they be government, whether they be high-end spiritual experience, look at the Taj Mahal is a symbol of the presence of the love of a man for his partner, his life partner, the one who was dear to his heart. That's an external indication of how he felt inside. And it stirs the presence in each of us because we recognize going through the process he did a beautiful job in building the Taj Mahal. This is a magnificent structure. And every aspect in it was built according to the presence he felt inside with regard to the love he had for his wife. So that is an expression of a man's love for his wife, his partner, his life partner, someone who he feels dear, intimate, and connected with. If we look at the great temples of the world, we're talking about the presence. They talk about the presence of the showbread. If you walk into a Supreme Court or into the U.S. Capitol building, you look at this vaulted space. You look at the statues of all the founding fathers, of all of the great explorers, and they surround the entire area. What are you intended to do? You're intended to feel the presence of the country. So you go, oh, it's awe-striking, and you feel awestruck. So the intention was to work towards establishing the presence, and I've been in some of the temples of the world, and that's what you're looking at, the presence. Okay, call it the presence of whatever you want, but you're in the presence of God. Okay? There are many determinations, many different. There are 7 billion people on the planet. There are 7 billion determinations of who God is and what he is. He's definitely not human. The experience of God is not as a human. And humans can put the labels on to think that, he's this way. He ain't that. And we go back to that determination that there's 1,000 names for God. And the most meaningful is really, if you think you can understand this, you are a complete idiot. So if we go back into the presence, then we've seen it, we've experienced what we think it is, but it's all from the structure itself. It's not from the source, although the source may be the fundament, the impetus or the intention is to draw the source there. Temples are built to draw the presence of God, so that there is a presence of God because the temple structure is built to mimic and to vibrate exactly that aspect. But it's the presence. And so when we move into a definition to want to be in the presence completely, then we start to evolve quite rapidly because we attract that frequency to us. It becomes foundational to our own determination. We then know, because we can experience the presence of someone else, and we have an internal indicator that goes, presence, this is real. This is truth. We have indicators in the body. Your hair stands up. There's a warm arm that comes around your shoulder. There's a voice that gently whispers in your ear. Or when you're just waking, not sleeping, or sleeping, not waking, there's a live, actual, physical voice that says to you, as of today, your life will change. And you go, what? What? Who said that? I know there's somebody here, but the house is empty. So we're experiencing aspects of ourselves coming into alignment with the presence.
So you're saying, in effect, that it is because it is the real deal. It is the actual presence of the divine that we fall away from words and we are in an experiential mode as opposed to an intellectual mode.
Yes. We're in an experiential mode, and the mode is beyond emotion. It carries heavy emotion with it, but it's actually far deeper than that. Now, one of the aspects that we were talking earlier with regards to the soul is a fundamental aspect that the soul feels. For instance, we're in, and you're in your soul form, and I'm in my soul form, and you put your attention on me. Guess what? I am totally aware of you. This, the nanosecond you put your emotion, not your emotion, but your feeling, you're feeling into me. I feel you exactly as you feel me. There's nothing hidden. There are no games. There's no anything. I know your entire experience. So that's a quality of soul, is feeling. And that is the feeling that associates us with truth. And feeling is without words. We usually have to ascribe words to it. How am I feeling? And we go in, we ponder, we go deeper. Meditation brings us in touch with our feelings. This is not emotions. This is not intellect. This is feeling, which is profound, deep, and associated with the nature of our being. So when we connect to that, we're connecting to truth. It is always true how we feel. We make the mistake of believing that our emotional field is feeling, and the language actually has put us there. It's not the truth. It's been known in times past. Yes, it's being brought out again, but this is the nature of the truth. So when you feel, it is always true. And feeling is the direct connection of your soul to yourself through the life cords into your heart, which is why people say, you got to get out of your head, buddy. You got to get into that old heart, right? And that's the truth. So we start to appreciate truth. We start to taste the nectar of what it's like, of that place without words, and we start to live from there. And our experience changes. The nature of how important our vocal cords are shifts. The relationship to being dipped in the experience that is built by the powerhouse of emotion, which is a human thing, then we start to see reality, and we start to lust after the things which are unspoken. Part of the challenge that people have in doing this work is they don't know what to say. Because feeling does not carry words, it has to be translated. And feeling is profound, feeling is possible anywhere in the world. It's a quality you had before you came here, it's a quality that you will have when you leave. It's an eternal quality, it's an aspect of soul, it's an aspect of all of creation. And we've been somehow fudged and cadoodled and shoehorned away from it, to believe that the phony is the real.
But that won't only happen until we do the work.
No, can't. Can't happen until you do the work. But again, we come back to the fundamental. What's the universe for? It's to make a choice. There is no, from the higher realms, I've never experienced any judgment, any discipline, or any punishment. You're perfect where you are. Now what would you like to do? Let's get this straight. I love you. Now let's get down to work. Okay? So we get some things out of the way. And they're really very simple, but they're self-replicating. And they build up in the emotional field until there's a feeling of, oh my God, this is insurmountable, I can't possibly get... But how did Alexander get through the Gordian knot? He picked up a sword and cut it. So we have that technology, we're able to do that.
And the bubble is one of the ways of doing the work, and it is available. And
yes.
It is, if we can describe, because I'm always fascinated by the stages of the protocols.
Sure.
And perhaps you could we have about 20 minutes left on this
sure.
tape. Perhaps you could talk about how those protocols evolved and how each one of them perhaps, if it in fact does build upon one another. And in my particular experience, I've found that each one made the previous more profound and more settled into my being, to the point where with anti-angst was the most profound experience for me. So, and I know the bubble didn't occur with all of those aspects in the beginning, but they evolved. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
When we started the bubble, we had done a lot of work over a great number of years. And a lot of people come to me and say, well, I've done that, I've done that work. And we actually perceived that there wasn't really much else to do. We weren't going to learn a lot. You know, this is good, we'll do this for other people. And of course, we went through the entire process ourselves, twice before it was it was expanded to a greater public. We experienced changes that became less definable. But something just happened. I don't know what that was, but man, that was profound. I don't even have the words for it. So we worked through that, and then we lived in that, believing that was the ultimate, because at the time, for us and those we knew, it was the ultimate experience, to have a bubble. And it is wonderful, it is marvelous, it is a creation, it's a co-creation between a human, me, and the heavens, who instructed. I'm just like the point. And I said, yes, I'll do this. And this is what I like. So I set the intention and I agreed to be open for the process. And we were directed and instructed what to do, when to do, how to do it, and what to remove, what to put in, and then watched for a number of days at a time, in fact 6 months total, waking and sleeping. And we thought we had the ultimate, and we did. And then we lived in it. Well, each period of time has its evolutionary allotment. Okay, you've done enough, you can't do any more today. You've done 25 things, you've got them all accomplished, but tomorrow is another day. So you get what it is you're looking for, which was the bubble, which expanded and went throughout the world. And we lived in it. We said, but there's something else here. This is really grand. I mean, this is really terrific. We're so different. Everything is completely changed for us. Our perceptions, our outlooks, completely changed. And we said, well, there's something else. Well, when we first started to work with the bubble, nobody actually believed that humans were, as we were talking about before, so resistant to change. Now, that's not a function or a function of inability. It's a function of stuckedness, because you haven't been allowed to make decisions your whole life that would ever express the real you without being slapped. So we learn by, stroking and slapping. This is mostly how it's done. Not just here, everywhere. So we're well-trained, we're good people, we're well-trained, we're well-meaning, and we recognize that we become resistant. And that's what we found, and we have said that's the superglue that holds people where they are. It's been bred into us by the culture, in the DNA, through many generations of living human beings who've had similar experiences to ourselves, in a broad range of experience that's actually in my body. This is my DNA. This has recorded all experiences of my lineage back to the beginning. Okay, so those are automatically in there. And we said, well, resistance is it. That's why people don't do it. But why do we resist? And we recognized the bubble we had never put on automatic. The bubble was a free choice vehicle. It would assist you, and it could be a great help, and indeed was, and is, and will continue to be a great help. But it doesn't take away your free agency, because that's fundamental to the foundation and the continuing floor of Avenue, the floor of the granary, where all the work is done above, is based on this free agency.
So anyone who, sorry to interrupt, but anyone who just has a bubble is missing 9/10 of the experience, even though
missing a lot of it.
They've made the first choice, and
Yes.
they've accepted, and
Yes.
they're open and willing to the bubble, but they
Yes.
are missing 9/10 of the experience.
They're missing a lot of the experience. They're missing a deepening of the connection. They're missing aspects that have been, as we found, set up by consciousness and given to us, like I say, the Easter egg hunt. Oh, there's something out there, I can smell it. I wonder which way it is. And then we go out, and we, by determination, by our engagement, by our interest in, there has to be something. There's a slight abrogation in the force field here. There's a cut in we're not quite getting the full force anymore. So we went out and we found what it was. And the second one seemed to be the choice, the personal choice, to stop resisting. Okay, the first one is you just kind of want a bubble. You really don't even know what you're getting into. Well, after you've lived in the bubble for a while, you realize this is really grand. This has completely changed my relationship. I see that other people open up to me in the middle of nowhere. People smile at me when I go down. I haven't changed. I didn't do anything. I don't know them. I never met them. I don't know them from Adam. And they're coming up and telling me their life story. I see that my job is giving me offers that were held away from me for so many years. I see that everything is working. And then you start to scratch your head and say, but there is this other thing. And we found it was resistance. So what is resistance? Well, that's the natural way that we've learned to live, that I resist movement. I want to stay in what I know and what I'm comfortable in. Nobody comes into this world saying, I want change. I mean, only politicians say that. And they only say it for political movement because it rattles the inside. Yeah, let him do it. Let him make the change. We'll go along with it, but somebody else got to do it. So this one is like, no, I'd like to change. I'd like to open myself to change. And I'd like to put myself into the flow of life. So that was the next one, which came back to us. We realized it was about the flow. About why does all this work, but somehow I feel disconnected to it. Well, I'm going to make a choice to connect with it. And as a result, then you now know a lot more about yourself, and you can place yourself on that slowly moving river of life and go down at your own pace. But you're now part of a much broader experience. You've opened yourself to deeper levels of understanding, deeper levels. Each one of these puts you further out of the realm of language. Okay? And then the next one after that was, well, there's something here, and it seems to be about societal patterning, because these are the fundamental things. For some, there's not enough. I don't know why there's not enough. There shouldn't be that way. I mean, it's unlimited out there. There's got to be more where this came from. So it's another way to hook in, is to give up the restrictions, which are other ways that we've learned and are self-governing in. No, I can't have that. It'd be nice for somebody else, but not for me. So it's levels of this.
So it's giving up control, then giving up resistance, then giving up restrictions, and then
after the one which came back to us, we don't name them. We say this is the fundamental. The word here is restriction, and then people live the experience and they say this is about breaking the bonds. What bonds are we talking about? The bonds that are placed on you at birth. You've already learned. You've been programmed coming down the birth canal. Secondly, the actual experience of your society, where you live, go to school, your teachers, your friends in the playpen. The whole experience leads you to living in that fashion. So the next one is really about breaking those bonds that you are frankly unaware of. Why are you unaware of? Because you can't see them. They exist subconsciously. You've been patterned subconsciously. Because you didn't know any better, you allow yourself to continue to be patterned subconsciously. Whenever you're not conscious, you're unconscious. So therefore, there's a lot of the day that you're unconscious. Advertisers get little words in there, and all of a sudden you're buying scope. You never saw the thing before. You reach it off the shelf. Oh, I don't know about this. I'll give it a try. Hopefully they get you for good, but...
And it goes even, I would understand if you can extrapolate a little, the very core of male-female relationships and how we are taught to respond. And there's a lot of, suffering around those preconceived notions of who we are as men and women in this earth experience.
Well, much of this comes from other places, other times, whatever. It's somewhere else in the universe they're experiencing this, but it's part of our gestalt. So it takes care of all of that too. So things come up, they're brought to your attention. I wonder about those three little words, a stitch in time. How many of us know a stitch in time? Hopefully we learn that, that's useful. But most of those, like country western music, the idioms are engaged, and the common denominator is I suffer. So breaking the bonds allows us to see them for what they are, and say, is this useful to me? How has this ever helped me? Has it ever made me $1 or given me a meal? So that's the next step. We break the bonds. And again, all of these roll out. They continue forever because you have to have in your own life, you have to have your journey and your experiences, which are completely unique to you, and the timing is always important. So you might have heard the same thing 20 times, and then you hear it that one time when your left ear is open, right ear, whichever, you go, oh, look at that. I've lived that way. Is this useful for me? I don't think so. And so you become more conscious, and your decisions tend to stick better if you're more conscious. So that was that aspect, breaking the bonds. Well, by the time people have finished breaking the bonds, we now have okay, man, I've done a lot of work. And this is like, I've done it over years, and I'm a little tired. I need a vacation. Well, people go to the Caribbean, they go to the Maldives, they go somewhere else in the world. They go to Europe, they have a big vacation, they get on a cruise ship, they fly someone else. Vacation. I need vacation. I need a vacation. I've been working so hard. So we thought, well, I need a place that's mine. It doesn't belong to anybody else. That no one's touched. It's untouched by human hands. It's untouched by the ideas of another. It is my place. It is my place. It's already probably designed, but I want to have my own playground and my own garden. And so we called it the garden. We call it in the garden. You don't want to be going into the garden. You want to be in the garden. And so you enter that place from whence you come out when you want to, but it's always present. And it's your own place, and it's inside, and you're also inside your bubble. So that's really the place of peace, where you begin to experience deeper levels of peace, although you do. The entire journey is greater and deeper levels of peacefulness. And then after that is over, we then have what we call the open heart. Again, not opening the heart. Who wants to go through the entire process? You want to open your heart? Let's open it. Bang. But meanwhile, in all the work that you've done, you recognize you're not this. Oh, I am this. How wonderful! And you build up this archive of your understanding of self, this library, this museum of you, that you wander the halls at night, that you can go in any time you like, that you understand, oh yes, I put that in the archive a long time ago. That doesn't affect me anymore. And you now move into a place that you have your own place. It's now safe to open your heart. Because if you talk to people who had their heart blown open, or their heart's open, they could experience this kundalini, they could experience it in many different aspects, but there's a sense of God, this is painful. And it's very hard to keep your heart open because you feel everyone else. You know what they did that day. You know by one single glance at them, you know the nature of their life and how much they suffer. And you go, oh, that hurts. And you can only take it for a certain amount of time before you will close your heart down. Many people might want to be like Jesus or the Buddha. And in an instant, their fingers they're there. Well, now it comes with all kinds of responsibility because you have to act according to your knowledge. And it causes pain. And you perceive that which is not your own as being your own. So now you are in a safe place to open your heart so that you too can begin to receive what is actually there. And I'm not talking about emotional, romantic love. I'm talking about the actual force of love, which is itself interconnected with creation itself. It's why the worlds are made. It's why you're here. It's why you created in the first place. It's why the one who created you was created. This is the force of creation itself. It's an active force. It is always active. Now you open up. You can express to your heart's content, but you're also getting the information field sent out from the force of creation. You're picking up the frequencies. You're reading the HI. You're reading the high frequency, the HF signals. And you get them, and they're useful to you, and you can now start living that way, and not creating from the one who you thought you were. You're now connected, and share the presence of the one who you truly are. So that brings you more into the presence. Well, when you're in that, you felt, yeah, everything's really changed. I'm really connected. Now you come under the thing, what is free agency? So what? Let's go back to that platform again. Exactly who is choosing here? How come I'm supposed to be able to do these things, but it doesn't show up? So that's connecting you to what we term angst, which is apparently incurable. You could be well connected with Weltschmerz, sadness and sorrow from the world. In the scriptures, it would say, Jesus sitting in Gethsemane on the day before his transfiguration, here, if you believe in that, said, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how many times I would have gathered ye as a mother chick beneath her wings, and ye would not." So it's general sadness for others. That being was not unhappy at that time for himself. He was unhappy for others. So it much more connects you to that sense of, well, who does choose here? And so you recognize that you come to the point of recognizing that now that you're experiencing the presence of self, and because you're experiencing, you are now a manifestation and representative on earth in a physical form of that presence that everyone's looking for and has been yearning for and doesn't know how to get at, that you made this choice. And when you recognize you made this choice, you can't point your finger at anybody. Not God, not your parents, not your teachers, not your bosses. You know you made that choice, and you become content. And that's the nature of the angst. That is curable. From our perspective, that's completely curable. And many people feel that angst is the icing on the cake. And in fact, for us, we don't feel there's anywhere else to go with these protocols. That's it. When you've finished with that, you have finished what it's possible for a human, normal human being, to experience in terms of finishing their work. Okay, so now your work's due. What would you like to do? Now that you've finished the big job, how would you like to live? And you've already got to the point where you're not saying, well, not for me. And you've learned how to feel into, which is the creational part of self. You've learned how to let go of the production to the universe, which is perfectly designed to do that, provided you allow it to do its job and can get out of the way. And that's the fulfillment of the program. What do you want to do? What do you like to do? What would you like to do now?
Exactly, which can be overwhelming in and of itself. However, I guess the next thing we can talk about is exactly that, getting to that point where you're no longer a human doing, you become a human being. And it doesn't really, whatever you do, doesn't have the same emotional charge.
No.
And it may very well be that you may completely do something different. You may embellish an aspect of who you are and what you are doing and take that in another direction. Or it may be simply a continuation of what you were doing before, but with a greater presence. And then I guess the next level, once we realize that we've gone through all the possible human protocols, or the human aspects, we get to the point of coming into service. And that is the end of the tape, really. So I just wanted to get that out there. So if you would like, we can get the response on the next tape. Because we're running this, we have 1 minute left on here.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Oh, we just leave him there.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not?
Well, we're recording again, and we have a little visitor that's come who's enjoying the energy, and he's sitting right behind you. Isn't that wonderful?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we were talking about the moving from experiencing all of the states of human development or the human condition as it becomes slowly dissolved into the light of consciousness, and the human experience of coming to the point where, okay, now what would we like to do, or what is it indeed that we're here to do? So I'll leave that to you to now extrapolate.
A lot of this work is about nature. If you study nature, you see an elm tree is an elm tree. It's not an ash tree. Humans get involved and they go elm ash or ash elm. They will develop other things, but fundamentally there's a nature to an ash tree. There's a nature to a tomato, although there are many different species. We still know tomato when we hear tomato. And so it is with humans. So what we're looking for is rather than ignoring the nature, what a human's nature is, and each one of us is unique, and yet there are fundamental core things that remain the same. We are 7 billion varieties of human, and that's what we experience. There might be 45,000 different varieties of tomatoes. But if I say tomato, you understand my meaning. If I say human, you still understand my meaning, but what are there, 5 different central races? And so there are differences, and yet fundamentally every man loves his children, every mother loves her children, we all want the same things. We all yearn for peace and somehow think it's beyond our, because we are, again, experiencing the world externally. But if we go back to our nature, and we go back through all the work of the aspects which are truly not of our nature, we are not naturally violent. That is not something that people are. People live peacefully. You live peacefully with your neighbors unless you put under duress. So if we go back to the central nature and we accomplish eradicating all the aspects of self that we perceive as parts of ourself, that we bought into as this is part of me, and say, no, that's not part of me. Has that been useful? I really had enough of that. And we drop it, we get back to the bare, basic nature. Well, the nature of something carries its presence. So we come to the point where we are experiencing ourself as self, and nothing other than self. If we experience ourself as self connected to this universe flow of living, organic, pulsing energy, and we come into alignment with that, I'm not talking sin or being a goody-goody two-shoes, just simply coming into alignment with the nature of creation, then everything works for itself. And what we learned early on is that consciousness, as I'm fond of saying, consciousness always stacks the deck in its own favor. Well, why would it go against its own nature? And we are part of that nature. We are specifically designed. You don't question that a dog is a dog. There are 5,000 different breeds. A dog is a dog. They may express differently, but fundamentally a dog has a certain nature which can be differentiated quite easily from that of a cat. I mean, they're not similar in any way.
And part of that nature is loving to be in the energy of this kind of conversation.
He's experiencing his dogginess.
Exactly. Perfect.
So when we get back to our own perfect nature, and we express and are the presence of that nature here, we are connected continually with consciousness, which always stacks the deck in its own favor. Its own favor is its own nature, as it expressed in varieties throughout creation. Consciousness loves everything. We come into that field of love. We become connected to it. And when we do that, doesn't matter what we do, if we're following the pulses, the pulses that come up that we all know about. Some of us follow them and some of us don't, and the ones that don't are usually ones that go deeply out of alignment and then they're unhappy. We follow those pulses, we come back into that. Then we can simply express self and be self. We are self, I express myself. I would like to go out today. I would like to leave the house today and go shopping. We do that, then we come back home and we experience what it was that we did inside the house. So it leads us to connection with the life forces itself and understanding if we put our attention and want to know more, it is instantly available to us. It does not have to come through an intermediary like myself. I'm just sharing the journey with others who are interested in these kinds of explorations. And being a soul being, you are interested in exploring. You are interested in experiencing. Why do you go to the Caribbean if you don't want an experience? Why do you travel to the remote jungles of Amazon, as my son has done, unless you want the experience? And that's what we thrive on. So if we follow our nature, how can we go wrong? We've been designed to be that way. And so much as life has taught us that, no, you're not that. No, you're not that. Well, actually, you are that. And so it leads you into fulfillment of coming back to connection with your source, who is you, at a higher level that cannot be seen but can be experienced. And as you were mentioning, a lot of these aspects people don't know how to speak is because how do you express that? It's not possible. There isn't language for it. I know German's good in philosophical explanation. They have a lot of words that are emotional descriptors. English is a good language for business. So we're kind of stuck on what we can use. And so I say, wow, or cool, or holy. But a lot of people consider these things to be sacred. And when you go into the sacred, there are no words to describe the sacred. Why would you have 1,000 names for God if one of them would do? And none of those words will describe the elephant. Just a glimpse through a keyhole. So we step through the keyhole onto the other side and are continually connected.
And at some point, I guess for some of us, maybe for all of us, I'm not sure. Maybe you can share this with us. We come to the point where we realize that we're here to be in service.
Ah, yes, yes.
But that service, for me personally, it's not being a slave. It is the antithesis. It is the total liberty to get out of the way of the ego and the self, and to allow one's purpose to flow through one to others, to be an open conduit. And if that's in fact true, then how does that happen? How is that so?
Well, service is an aspect of self. What does self do? You can be, in which case you're simply being. It requires nothing. You're exploring your own nature. You're being in your own nature. It doesn't require you to do anything other than breathe. A lot of people do that worldwide, and indeed it's growing in popularity because people find it profoundly changes their lives, even if they meditate for 10 minutes a day and they've never meditated themselves or taken it seriously. And, well, I don't know what it is about the meditation, but I feel better. And it's used for maintaining health or maintaining natural frequencies, getting you again in touch with Source, the source of self. And to go out and express is truly service, because you're simply being, you're doing who you are. And if you are connected to everything in the universe and you're doing who you are, it has to be in alignment with the universe. So you're doing what you decided to do as an independent, connected or interdependent, connected being, connected with all of this. You can't put a foot sideways. So everything, regardless whether it appears to be your demise or you're moving forward, is part of a much larger picture. Everyone here wants to be connected to something larger than themselves. But if they're doing it from the ego, which defines them, oh, I can't have that. Oh, not for me. Oh, if I step out of line, I'm going to kill my parents. You know, my uncle told me I was this. My aunt played with me in inappropriate ways. Whatever, that is not who you are. Once you get over that and see it, and not shove it down some dark sewer somewhere and assign it to that, you are the entire experience. Who you are is a result of all of those experiences. Here you are, you've finished your work, now you enter service because there isn't anything else to do. And so you enter a joyful service. You are sharing self with others, continually. So, well, how would a society like that be? Believe it or not, there are people who would like to be a garbage man. Not my chosen profession, but there are people who just love to do garbage. Well, gosh, they get all kinds of neat stuff left out in the curb. I don't know why, but they do. So every aspect we're worried about, someone will step in to handle that.
Right. It's and that's really the bottom line, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same for everyone who goes through the bubble program, isn't it? I mean, but you'll find your own source of expression. Is that correct?
You do find your own source of expression. You don't even find it, you just become it. Because it's already there. In many cases, people have been exploring, experiencing in a lifetime, learning a skill. To think, well, yeah. Well, then that's taking over the motivation that somebody else didn't tell you to do it. I love this, and I'm going to keep doing it. Wonderful. You've made that choice. You've come back into your right in this universe to be here. You always have a right to choose. Higher beings never interfere unless you've passed the point where you've lost that ability to choose for yourself. They will assist you at that point. They only help when you can no longer help yourself. Just as you would a child. You let the child fall until it can't get up, and then you come and lift it up, and then you put it on its feet again, and it runs and does what it wants to do.
So we're back to the original topic of the suffering. So we can see how that would dissolve completely in the light of that awareness and that presence of the self, the full presence of the soul in the self, and being as you are and doing as you are.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we lose compassion.
Not at all. In fact, you gain compassion. What you do lose is you lose sympathy. You lose pity. You lose any concern for the "oh, poor me" syndrome, because you see it for what it is, a game. You're beyond all games. You don't play games anymore. You'll say exactly how it is because they need to hear it. And there's not many people in the paradigm who will say it. And they have to hear it. And the idea of presence is, when you become yourself, you're the presence of self. That in itself is a gift to everybody you know, because that's what people crave. They crave the presence. They crave attention. They crave self-stroking. And they feel it. And not only that, but when they see you as presence, they say, it's possible for me. So you become a standard of what is supposed to be there. This is the original. And when you complete your trip and get back there, you are once again the original. You're it. There ain't nobody else. Nobody's showing up. No, you're not getting a visitation. I'm here. I'm now. Explore and enjoy.
Well, in the true spirit of Christmas, because today is December, lost track.
December 26th.
December 26th, the first day after Christmas.
Yes.
The words that come to mind are joy to the world. And thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Hazel, for bringing this great joy to the world.
Well, it's been a great pleasure, and it continues to be a great pleasure to just be me. And we keep working, and there's obviously more tomorrow and more later today. So that's part of it, is that from the aspect of self you get to explore all of these things. And remember, because you're without the dross and the mud and everything else, it is truly a new experience. It's brand new.
And like I said, joy to the world.
Joy to the world. Joy to the world. Bye.